record button.
That's a new feature, by the way, that Zoom puts out there so that everybody,
That's nice.
full transparency. I wish they would remind you to actually
Record.
record. Before we actually officially start, we have Rita Bettino there in our Hollywood Square stars. Rita had reached out to me. Rita has been a frequent flyer at the advertiser calls on Friday. She joined the 4 o'clock calls quite often, very involved in the community, and had reached out a while ago about her interest in TDAC. And so the good news is we have a spot for her. So she's going to be joining us officially. The Board of Selectmen will approve it, or it's on their agenda to approve it on July 6th. But in the meantime, we asked Rita to get started with us. So Rita, you want to quickly introduce yourself and tell everyone what you're all about?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for that, but I can. So my name is Rita Bettino. We actually recently moved in the August of 2019, so right before all the pandemic stuff hit. Have been on the West Coast actually for the last almost 20 years, but I grew up in New York, so kind of coming back home. My background is in business, so I've been in marketing and advertising, but marketing for the past 25 years. I worked for PepsiCo. I've worked for a wine company. I've worked for a number of different companies, and now I'm doing marketing consulting. And on the side, I've been doing some home renovations. So kind of a varied kind of background, but I'm really excited to lend a hand and see what I could do to help. I really love this town. My husband and I have fallen in love with the town and can't wait to help out.
Yeah, when she and I talked initially, she had me at hello when she just said that she had a marketing background. I was like, well, there you go. So she will be official, but thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate that. And I know it is hard over these next couple of months, being that it is summer. But we have a lot going on. So I think what we'll do is get right into it. I'm going to hold off on the minutes just because I'd rather have more people join before we make that official, because I don't know if we have a quorum yet. But so we're going to start right off with Laura. You want to give everyone an update on the storefront art, where we are with that?
Yeah, so I think by now, has everyone seen the 128 Main Street, the old New Balance space? Have you seen, we got the pictures in the window. There's 6 panels. The team at New Renew got them once we got approved, printed and up. We're splitting the cost between TDAC as well as the landlords. So we're waiting to get that, but everyone's committed. I think they look great. They're very clean. They're nice. And so the next effort is to get them in some other places. We'll talk a little bit more. The chamber held a meeting with the real estate brokers in town, which was really interesting. I invited Kevin and Tucker, obviously. We learned a lot. And so I presented the idea, showed the pictures. I then also followed up with an email to everyone to remind them, to please talk to their landlords and to help us identify other buildings that would be ripe for this. We're trying I spoke specifically after the meeting to the broker who is representing the Main Street properties in between Connecticut Muffin and the Blue Mercury. That's one out-of-town landlord, and he does not seem interested, which is a shame, but we'll keep working on that. But I think we're going to do some knocking, we're going to have to really do some individual follow-ups, but everyone likes the idea, and we just need to roll them out a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think we should probably think about, and I see we've got some press on here tonight, but maybe get a story in, or maybe Grace or somebody would want to, I know this story's been out there and we've talked about it as part of our meetings, but maybe it would be a fun press release just about how we're dressing up downtown. The other part of this equation, and to digress a little bit, is that, and Brock, maybe you can speak to that and we can talk a little bit more about it at our brokers meeting, but it seems like spaces are starting to become active again, and there's a lot of looking around. So the good news is we might not need as many of these as we thought, but it's always nice to have it in our back pocket for when we do need to do that. But I think it really looks great. For anybody that hasn't driven by, check out New Balance. And Laura, you sent out an email to all of the other agents today saying, let's try to get it going, or whenever, the other day.
Yesterday, yeah.
So we will see. So, good job, everybody.
Yeah, great job, BJ. And I want to make sure if there is a little story that we give credit to the artists.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's important.
Right.
And
I have all
but they
that
look great.
information. I have all that information, so I can work with Dan Mulhern and make sure everything is
That'd be
included.
great. That would be great. Okay. Terrific. So our next agenda item is really to talk about the broker meeting. So Laura, again, why don't you kick us off in that, and then I will, and then we'll talk about some of our action items, if you will.
Yeah, so we had an in-person meeting. Brock helped and gave me the contact information for a lot of brokers that represent buildings around town. And then we pulled a few more names and we had pretty good attendance. What do you think, Tucker? We had like 15?
17? I thought 17 is what I counted. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were, Greg was there, Alan Magrino was there from our committee, Meredith Bach, my board president, myself, Kevin Tucker. And I think we really wanted to talk specifically to brokers because they have an interesting perspective because they're working in a lot of other markets. These were specifically commercial brokers. And the question I posed to them was, what are the barriers? You guys are obviously seeing businesses and bringing them to town and looking at spaces. And obviously there's a lot of reasons why a particular spot is not going to work for businesses. So based on that, I thought we got a lot of good feedback. We talked about taxes and the effect that the reval had 5 years ago and how the downtown taxes really did go up. We also talked about, the process of getting a new business up and started and trying to streamline the process for getting all the permits that you need through building and planning and zoning and health, if it's, that type of business. And they shared with us some interesting things that they had seen in Norwalk. And Tucker can follow up on what she and I did with that information. And, I thought it was a good discussion. And, there's some things that we can deal with and some things we can't. I think they appreciated the information. Number one, that TDAC, is involved and focused on this effort. And, that also that we've got, that overall we are business friendly, but that the cost to entry can be really high, especially with the taxes on the triple net leases. Did I leave anything out, Tucker?
No, I think that's a great summary. I mean, Brock, Greg, Kevin, you were all there. And when you're looking at our agenda, I've identified sort of 3 action items, if you will, from that meeting that I thought that this group could start to run with. But, the real focus, as Laura said, was asking them what are the barriers, and also what in other towns, if there's a reason that somebody comes to New Canaan and they're looking at a space, but they're also looking possibly in another town, what would it be that would have them draw them more to Darien or to another town versus New Canaan? And
the number one thing is, our location. We're not on 95. There's some things that we cannot change. But overall, I think we got some good input. The interesting thing that, well, I'll follow up on. So Tucker and I reached out to the Director of Economic Development and Tourism from the city of Norwalk. And I reached out to her and invited Tucker, and we went over there and talked to her and talked a lot about some of the tax abatements zones that they have, which over a 7-year period, businesses can apply to, that are within this zone. And it's all clearly marked on their website, can apply to have some of their property taxes abated. New Canaan is not going to be eligible. We thought, oh, this would be really cool for us, but it comes through state statute, and New Canaan does not have that option based on our demographics. We're not going to, be designated for an enterprise zone or an opportunity zone, which was, it's disappointing, but understandable. But we did come up with some interesting ideas that we could possibly do.
yeah, that was a really great meeting. Before we move on to any more about that meeting, Greg or Brock or Kevin, do you have anything to add on the broker meeting? Any of your takeaways?
I
I'll
would
just
just
start.
mention, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
A couple of other things that were discussed were the parking situation and, rail transport and the impact of zoning laws on tenancy, whether they be real or perceived.
Right. Brock?
I just want to say thanks to Laura for putting it together. We always need outside input. We heard from key brokers who do business in other key markets. We need to, make sure we don't stay stale in our thinking. So hopefully Rita will bring some West Coast ideas, as they're always on the forefront of new things in the West Coast. So it was good to hear from the established credible brokers that do business elsewhere. And I think that's what we need to do more of, and glad Rita's aboard, and thanks for putting it together.
So after that meeting, I went back and looked at all my notes and oh, Kevin, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say that, I think we're in a changing economy, and I was kind of interested to see that Greenwich is kind of on fire. Greenwich Avenue is kind of on fire, but our neighbors to the north and west are, everybody's in a different situation. And you can either look at the glass as being half full or half empty, and I think I look at it as being half full, and we're making progress, and we got a lot of opportunity. So.
Yeah.
I'm curious about, now that we're seeing the near completion of the Locust Avenue storefronts there, whether, Brock, do you have any idea how much interest there is in this kind of new kind of development in an expanding, potentially expanding commercial part of town? And what's so interesting about it too is the interest there might reactivate forest to some extent. So I'm curious about whether brokers are seeing interest there and whether there's some tendency filling those spaces.
Sure. I think any new building would attract new activity. I'd heard they had a lease out to a particular type of tenant. I don't think it's done yet. So I don't want to say what type of tenant it is, but we have plenty of them elsewhere in town.
Oh, boy.
So
Let me
there's
guess.
only one commercial tenant on that Locust Avenue side. I don't think we need to expand our business zone any further. There's enough space to fill in our CBD. So, that's probably at the outer limits of our CBD, but I think it's a great project, and hopefully, like you said, it does, give a shot in the arm to Forest Street and Locust Avenue and reignite things there.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, Tucker, is that one takeaway was that, we did a market demand study in like 2012, and we ought to dust that off and just look at it and say, ask ourselves, what do we think about it now without doing another study? Just kind of react to rereading it and asking ourselves what value it has now. And the other thing is, we really have to get planning and zoning, at least the chairman of planning and zoning, to be part of this discussion, because times change, and you got to constantly be looking at what are we trying to accomplish in town. So
Right.
they are a planning and zoning commission, and planning has to be an ongoing and changing thing. So
Yeah, we had agreed that we would pull the group together again, and we would include the chairman of planning and zoning. And that was one of the takeaways, was definitely for us to look, and if the agenda, which I sent to all of you, had the links to the market demand study. So what I'd like to do, and we'll finalize all this at the end of the meeting, but what I'd love to do is get some subgroups going to do a couple of these things. And one of which is going to be to take a look again at the market demand study. Granted, it's a decade old document, but I think there's still a lot of the same principles are going to be relevant now. And some of the takeaways, and as Kevin said, I don't think there's really a need to go and recreate a whole study, but we could probably look at that and see if there's some insights in there. And I have to say, when we did that market demand study back in 2011, a lot of the things that we talked about there ended up getting implemented, whether it was that we wanted a ladies shoe store and we eventually did get a ladies shoe store, or to, the leakage areas of what people were leaving town for. So that's going to be one of the work streams that I think that we all can be working on over the summer. The other was the idea, and we talked about this a while back, but now we are ripe for this, is to have, hi Nancy.
Hi there. Sorry I'm late.
That's okay. We're just talking about our brokers meeting, which Nancy was at the Historical Society. Nancy nicely hosted us, so maybe she heard some of this in the background. But so Nancy, we're just saying one of the things that we want to work on over the summer is to relook at the market demand study that we did in 2011, given that it's dated, but just seeing if some of the same principles apply. But the other thing, and we'll need help from planning and zoning on this, is this business development guide. We did hear over and over again from the brokers that while I think our planning and zoning department, or at least the planning part of and building department, puts a great emphasis on trying to move permits through as fast as they possibly can, sometimes it feels very, very like it's at a snail's pace many times for somebody who's opening up a new business. And I was very involved in one of the new businesses that's opening up on Main Street, and I was getting calls every day from the landlord saying, why is this being held up? Why is this being held up? Only to go and start inquiring and finding out that it was really on their end. The majority of the delay was on their end, but it's just, they don't know what they don't know. And I guess every town is a little bit different. So, and again, in the agenda, I have the links to all these documents, but this was the one that New Rochelle had done, starting and operating your business in New Rochelle. And it would take you through every step and the contacts and who to call. And actually, back to the conversation that Laura and I had yesterday over in Norwalk, that was one of the things that the woman there, and she was a dynamo. She is an urban planner by training, but she said that she does a lot of that, of literally one-on-one consulting with new businesses to get them started. And some towns have you start with health department, some start building department, but everybody ultimately has to sign off. So that's another, sort of work stream that I want us to move forward on. I mean, that's something that I think would be helpful regardless if we were in rough times or good times. It's just a nice thing that we could give to somebody who's thinking about opening up a business. I think.
Is there any possibility of a privileged path, if you will, for small businesses applying for doing work on a storefront or whatever that needs to be applied to planning and zoning, that at every meeting, planning and zoning meeting, there's a spot that's held for a new business opportunity or something like that, that just privileges businesses, and combined with kind of a guide like a Norwalk did, or was it New Rochelle?
Rochelle, yeah.
New Rochelle did, kind of a step-by-step outline of where you go next, the path to take. I don't know.
The good news is I think our planning and zoning department has done a good job of making a lot of the approvals an administrative approval if you're not changing things too drastically. Certainly the health department has to get involved. The new business that's opening up on Main Street that I spoke about, they were putting in new sinks and treatment rooms and all of that. And so
The salon, yeah.
It's a salon. So there's a lot of hoops that need to be jumped through on that end. But it really did, the application hit June 2nd and it was approved by June 9th. I mean, they just got hung up in all of the discussions prior, but Brock, I don't know. I mean, you seem to know how to work the process pretty well.
Well, I think, credit is due Lynn and John Goodwin. They have changed over the last 5 years. They have shown flexibility. People knock them on the sign regulations. They are what they are. They have moved the sign applications to the front of the meeting so that, there is sort of a fast track process. So you don't have to sit through 3 hours. They've done what they can to, help businesses get their applications in. I think we need to educate the landlords and maybe the residential agents who don't do a lot of the work, that they need to, read and learn the regulations and, work within the framework that's everybody's, working under to, get uses approved and where different uses are allowed in town and what the sign regulations are. I think, The more residential agents know and the more landlords know, the faster the process is. I mean, it's not, you know, I want to give credit to P and Z and Lynn and the building department and the fire marshal, who all are very helpful in navigating you through that process, as long as you take the steps and you know how it works.
Yeah, and a pre-meeting goes a long way. I think when you have a concept, to go in and meet with them, and they will make the time to sit down and say, you know, we're thinking of opening a salon or whatever it is, and they will walk you through it, and then we'll usher you through the approval process if it's all within reason. I mean, that's another example. The sign permit, when we were getting this last application approved, and I spoke with Lynn, and she said, if they really want to expedite this, have them stick within the guidelines of the sign guidelines that we have, and then it's approved. She can do it just like that. Anything beyond that, well, then that's on them, because it will have to go through the regular approval process. So I think Brock's right. I think our planning and zoning department has really made it a priority to move these through. So that's going to be a work stream. Again, that really is going to have to be the lead on planning and zoning, but I would like to think that one or two of our TDAC group can sort of work with Lynn on that a bit. Laura mentioned the Norwalk incentive programs, which is what we talked about yesterday. And so Norwalk is obviously a very different city, and their chamber is also very active, but their chamber of commerce is really B2B. You know, they do big, huge seminars and things like that. But one of the programs that they have, first of all, the funding was blowing my mind. I mean, Laura and I were just scratching our heads. I mean, she got $150,000 to run this small business academy that they have 150 people sign on at a time. So it's what we just spoke about, really. If you're thinking of opening up a business, you can go and attend these sessions. They were by Zoom this year. And if you attend them all and sort of, you know, graduate from the class, you're already ushered kind of through, because you've already been through a lot of the information gathering piece. So there was that. The incentive programs, that's what one of the brokers had told us about, these Norwalk incentive programs. But as Laura mentioned, we're really not going to be eligible for many of those programs. But she did talk a lot about their Visit Norwalk. I mean, again, they have $100,000 from the municipality for a marketing program. They have an agency that runs all of their Visit Norwalk, and then the parking authority.
This was the best.
Another $100,000, because they see it as revenue producing. If they get people to come to Norwalk, they're going to park in their parking lots, and therefore they're going to get the revenue. So they have $250,000 a year that is strictly, and she was very clear with us on this, that is for ad placement, videos, social media. That is basically the lion's share of all of that. So
to drive people from outside of Norwalk and the surrounding areas to Norwalk, the aquarium, you know, everything else. So
they also have a full-time communications manager within the city. I mean, a full-time, somebody who runs all of the communications, everything from the economic development to things coming out of the mayor's office. So it was a really enlightening meeting. And so I want us to also, the sort of the third work stream would be to look at some of these opportunities that she did identify that they're doing there, that we could also, I think, put in place here and get that going. I mean, she talked about an entrepreneurship micro grant. They have matching funds. And Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about the matching funds? Because we thought that's where the most opportunity would be happening for.
Yeah, of all those opportunities, you know, could the municipality set aside some matching funds so a small business that wants to open up here could apply? And she said it's just, you know, some of the grants are very small. Someone wants to put a planter or a new bench in front of their business, or paint a new sign or anything, and that businesses can apply. Tucker's Alan said she's trying to get in. Alan Magrino.
There's no waiting room, so I'm not sure. Everybody else got it.
Do you want to resend her the link? So that they have a grant matching program that was very interesting. So if someone wants to buy a $1,000 new sign, they could apply. They'd put up 500, the municipality would put up 500. I mean, that would be a very different concept here in New Canaan. But in terms of appearing business friendly and showing the partnership that we feel for our local businesses and our desire for them to do well and flourish, You know, that was definitely interesting. You know, and municipal funds would obviously have to run through a whole different process, but maybe there's some private funds that could do that as well. So that's something we want to learn more about. But I think, you know, it's not just handouts, it's, you know, grants to help people.
So we've
through
invited
that
her to
process.
come to our September meeting. Sabrina is her name, Sabrina Church. She's going to come to our September meeting. She wasn't available for July, but she can really fill us in and we could be working on some things. But she was just, she had a lot of great ideas and much of them I think we could apply here in New Canaan. Which leads to the next, and I think this is going to be what TDAC is going to spend most of our time over the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks talking about. But as you've read, the Treasury has announced that all the towns are going to be getting these ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act funds. And we are getting just about shy of $6 million, the town of New Canaan. And we're going to get them in 2 tranches, if you will. We're going to start, our first tranche should be here by the end of this month, actually. And then we'll get our second, we have in 2 years, but we have 24 months from which to spend it. So we've also been meeting on that, figuring out what the process is going to be on how to make recommendations on how that money should be spent or what projects that money might go toward. So one of the things that we're going to do, and we jumped the gun, but we just want you all to know about it, and we want your participation, is on July 12th, we are going to host a community forum, a live forum, but we'll also have a Zoom opportunity for people to join. Hold on, someone's cooking here. That's what I get for sitting in the kitchen, right? So on July 12th in the town hall meeting room from 7 to 9 p.m. And I really would love to have as many TDAC members there as possible, because we are going to have the whole emphasis on this is going to be economic development from the local businesses and the nonprofits. We're not really thinking of this in terms of the municipality or governmental expenditures. This is really going to be about leveraging these funds to support the local businesses. This is what we've wanted. This is great news. Kevin invited me to sit on the WestCog meeting this morning, which is the Western Council of Governments, and all the first selectmen and mayors of the towns around us get together. And this was basically the topic of discussion today. And it's interesting how everybody's coming up with a different process from which to decide how or to recommend the funds be spent. But we feel that it only makes sense to have this first initial meeting. I mean, we've obviously got some ideas, and there's internally some projects that, you know, people are working toward. But and I sent you all. I will send you all the press release that we've been working on for this to invite input. We also were thinking that we would ask people to fill out a form in advance of coming to the meeting to sort of flesh out some ideas a little bit more, rather than have people come and then find out that, you know, they stand up and talk about that they want a new dog shelter or something like that, which not saying that wouldn't be this meeting is just for local businesses. The focus of this is local businesses and nonprofits. Lauren Patterson and the Chamber and TDAC, we are co-hosts, if you will. The 3 entities are the co-hosts of this meeting. So again, it's on July 12th, and it's basically an information session to assess, you know, the local needs. We need to identify what the needs are. BJ.
Are you running it on Zoom too?
Yes.
Oh,
What
awesome.
time is the meeting?
7 o'clock.
Good night.
7 to 9. Yep.
Yeah, and in
So-
talking about these matching funds, this could be a perfect example of something that, you know, we could put up some matching funds to help local businesses, you know, expand, open, enhance. So it'll be interesting. We'll be, the press release is pretty much done, and we'll be pushing it out, and I'll be sending it directly to the small businesses. Lauren will cover the nonprofits. You know, and I hope we get some good feedback. I think it'll be vital, and it's really important. So
Yeah, I mean, I want TDAC to play a key role in this. I mean, this is precisely why we are the committee that we are, and we can really help the municipality make some decisions as to how the money is going to be spent. Kevin, do you have anything to add? And that's a quick overview.
No, we're just looking for ideas.
So that's, and I'll send this all out to the rest of the group tomorrow. But it could be exciting.
How do we learn about what that money can be spent on?
Right.
Yeah, so there is a document that was just, there was one that was sent out a week ago, and then it was updated today. Frequently asked questions, what the eligibility is. It can't be used for things like tax relief or what have you, but I will send that document as well so you can all read it. It's 29 pages. Again, that was discussed a lot today at WestCog. Everybody's got differences of opinion on how the money can be spent. So the decision was made that possibly all of the attorneys for the local towns get together and come up with some, actually, we decided to do that both on how remote policies are going to work and also remote meeting policies are going to work, as well as how we figure out what's eligible and what's not.
But
There's
let's
some
keep
gray
the
areas.
attorneys out of it. It'll be $5 million before you know it. So, sorry. I mean, come on. So
So-
parking is something that it can be spent on, as an example.
Parking.
Yeah. A parking garage, parking
So
structure.
here are, to keep it, let's see, to respond to the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. For the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue due to COVID-19 public health emergency relative to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency, and to make necessary investments in water, sewer, broadband, or infrastructure. So it's pretty broad.
Great.
So one of the things I'm wondering is how this might potentially relate to transportation into and out of New Canaan, which obviously has a huge impact on local businesses. Is that a potential use? And I know that concurrently the state is trying to do something. So that I know this is municipal. So how does that relate?
Well, that's, yeah, Kevin, I see you're about to start on that.
Well, the state is getting a lot of money. And then the municipalities, the cities and towns are getting corresponding money. But we're supposed to all look at our, so how the state looks at needs is different than how we look at needs. Transportation is actually, we're very focused on trying to get our express trains back by the fall. That's our number one priority right now, because we're a commuting town. If we don't have commuting trains, we're not a commuting town. So we're working on that nonstop right now to try to figure out how to convince Metro North to bring back the express trains by September.
Yeah, we're also going to do another survey, send out another survey in a couple of weeks to the commuters. We sent one out, about a month and a half ago, just asking what's changed in the last, I know a lot of businesses, I don't know about you, but the train station's been pretty full recently. The last few days I've driven by and the main lot is full. And I even see cars now in the lower lot. So it's those express trains that are really going to be critical here.
The interesting thing about needs assessment is there were so many federal dollars coming in with PPP and stuff that, it's hard to figure out really nonprofits and how do you assess local businesses in terms of how can you make impactful investments in the town. So that's where we're looking for ideas. What do people think the needs are and how do you measure them, and what kind of few things could we do to really make an impact, not just spread a lot of money around. It doesn't get very impactful.
And that's why having Lauren certainly representing the nonprofits, I mean, she knows, really what's happening on that front. And then Laura can represent the business community, and then we'll represent the economic development piece of that.
The Connecticut or Fairfield County Arts Council, there's a big push that to try to get each town to designate at least 1% of their money to the arts and culture. So, I think it's good we're getting our nonprofits involved because I believe we can do better than that.
And the state really won't have any say in how we spend these funds because they're federal funds, is what I learned this morning, that this is really going to be up to, and there's an audit process and that kind of thing that will have to be followed through with as well.
We have talked over the years of the importance of a designated person that could really be focusing on luring and contacting various businesses to our community. Is there any thought about creating a position with these funds, either a part-time or a paid position, so that some of our efforts can really be activated by someone spending, not volunteer time outside of people's professions, but designated time?
I think that's what Laura and Tucker have been doing, right?
Right, but as
Yeah,
we
but-
learned yesterday, yeah, Laura.
Yeah, but it's, as you said, Amanda, it's on top of a full-time job. I mean, my primary responsibility is to my members, and, everything else that I'm doing is, on top of that. And it's not a question of workload. It's really a focus. And, sitting with that woman, Sabrina from Norwalk, that is her sole focus. Is she's not necessarily a recruiter, but walking everyone through the process and marketing the town and working with small business people. So yeah, I mean that's an interesting concept from a municipality standpoint, to put someone in charge, just a real point person, as opposed to each of us giving pieces of our time to that effort.
Tucker, you mentioned Noble.
Yeah. Well, so I've set up a meeting, I think it's next week, with Noble House. They're the agency that's been working with the Live New Canaan campaign. And if Alan's not on because.
No, I'm on.
Yes, she
I'm
is.
on. I finally got on. It took
Oh,
me
there she is.
forever, so, okay.
Okay, sorry about that. But we were talking about possibly meeting with them and seeing if there's some synergies that we could work with them on getting some in terms of everything from content to social media posts and that kind of thing, because there does seem to be some desire around town hall. Every department manager is supposed to be doing a lot of that, but it's not really getting done to the level that it needs to be getting done to really push it out.
Mhm.
So if it was a dedicated responsibility of somebody, so that, funds could certainly possibly supplement something like that as well. Nancy, you had your hand raised.
I had my hand raised. Tucker, I've mentioned this to you, but so Cole Ackers, who is the special project manager at the Glass House, he and I were in conversation around the work that he's been doing with Columbus, Indiana. And it's really kind of extraordinary what they've done to recreate the town based in some part on their architecture and, some of the stuff that's similar to New Canaan. And he's got a group of people that we were thinking of bringing out as part of October for Design, but it really doesn't fit with the Modern House Day Tour as much as it does with TDAC's mission. And I would really urge this committee to think about, it's like airfare and a couple of nights hotel with this group of people from Columbus that has transformed that town. And revitalized it in a way that is built. I mean, I'm being self-interested in the sense that the driving force behind it was the cultural assets, but it has transcended that, and it's helped businesses and restaurants and all kinds of stuff. And I think that Cole would be very happy to talk to this group because I asked him if he would, and he said he would. And Greg, I'm probably speaking out of turn. You know him better than I do, but he's helping us with our Modern House Day Tour Symposium. So this is how it came up. And, he's very connected, and he's a wonderful guy and a wonderful speaker himself. And I just think it would be really worth it to have him come and talk to this group. And then if it made sense to have him, be the liaison to bring this group of people that have been involved with Columbus here, that's something you can all decide.
Yeah, I would agree, Nancy. And Tucker, you've been in touch with Cole to set up a preliminary discussion, I believe.
I have.
And that,
Okay, so I
Yeah.
didn't know that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, we've been emailing back and forth, so we were trying to find a time. So, yeah, there, I mean, like I said, there's going to be a lot of ideas, and it's going to be up to our group as well as input from a lot of others as to how we make some recommendations to spend some of this money.
I'm just wondering, Nancy, if since the modernism in September has the potential of being a real umbrella for things cultural in New Canaan. We've talked about how many different not-for-profits, the Glass House, Grace Farms, can all kind of pool some energy into it's your program, it's your fundraiser, but at the same time it has lots of legs. And I'm wondering if in terms of this municipal funding, whether that becomes something, whether marketing dollars from that fund could potentially help you and help it become one of our big vehicles in the town for marketing all things cultural, because you've already well established it as a biannual thing, and it includes a lot of different organizations potentially. How do you feel about that?
Well, we're really excited because actually, we have, Amanda, as I think we have a huge group coming from Palm Springs Modernism this year. I think it's 20. They want it to be 24, but we don't have capacity, so I think it's going to be 22. And the nice part is that there's a lot of free programming. So it's the Historical Society's fundraising in terms of the Modern House Day Tour, but we have 29 programs in 30 days in October. So most of those are free. And I think it will be a draw. I think people are coming. If I just look at the data from the people that have bought tickets from us, they're coming from all over the country. So I think it is a real opportunity to capitalize on what's really great about New Canaan, which includes all of the cultural institutions, certainly not just the Historical Society. The Glass House is part of it, a big part of this. Grace Farms, we hope, will be part of this. A lot, and even the Land Trust, I was in discussions with them. So I think there's a lot of synergy in all of that.
Does Palm Springs have a sister city?
We're talking to Palm Springs about being the sister city.
That's what I'm wondering. It seems like a really great potential exchange.
And the group that Mark Davis is bringing is basically his board. So I'm sorry, my cat is here. But it's his key board members. So I think that if there's an opportunity to figure out about ways to partner back and forth, this will be the time this October.
Right. I'm just wondering, can we wine and dine that board and try to convince them that New Canaan is the sister city? It should be the sister city. I mean, think about the Northeast, Western, that exchange. Yeah.
Oh, you muted.
got muted.
Alan, what do you think?
No, I think it's terrific. And Tucker knows I've been talking to the Hollywood Reporter and have gotten them interested in a story on West Coast moving east, because there is a big uptick in Californians buying in New Canaan. So he's very interested for a fall issue, the New York issue, to include New Canaan in that is kind of an interesting thing, because he's been noticing how many Westerners are moving there. So as part of that, I'd love to know, do we know if anybody who lives in Palm Springs also owns a Modern in New Canaan?
We know of one. I know one person. Yeah.
Okay. That could be interesting to throw in
But
there.
this was, I mean, this is not recent. They've had a house in New Canaan for a long time in New Canaan, and they've had a house in Palm Springs for a long time.
That's okay. I just think we're just trying to tie in the fact that, you know, we're not really Hollywood East, but the fact that, you know, New Canaan is now attracting this whole other type of person beyond just the people coming out of New York City. So,
Yeah, and what did those stats, I'm trying to find that, Alan. What did we learn that that California was actually our third highest?
yeah, third highest search on the Live New Canaan site after New York, like the New York area and Texas. People from California have really been looking at it.
Can I just
So,
make one comment? I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't be speaking, but when
No, you
say
can. Go ahead.
When you say California, it's literally like 3 states. And so I'd be curious to know from where, because
Right.
Northern is different from the middle, from Southern. It's so different. So I'd be curious, you know, where.
Right.
from
people
what
come
I'm
from.
hearing, it's LA area a
Yeah.
lot. LA.
Nancy, could you invite this group to potentially do some kind of a presentation about Palm Springs? So that, you know, it's kind of a gesture towards them. And maybe that gets reciprocated in Palm Springs.
We were supposed to go out there. We were
Right.
supposed to go out with Evolution of Design, which was the presentation that we did on why the Harvard Five came to New Canaan and what made the architecture so distinctive. That was supposed to be live. So I can certainly ask them the way that they have scheduled their trip. They're arriving, they're having the Friday, Saturday, and they're leaving on Sunday for New Haven to see the Hotel Marcel. So I don't know that there's much time, but they might be interested in doing something virtually.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, these are all opportunities that are, yeah, really right before us, and we've got to make something happen. Let me just quickly see here on my notes. I have pages and pages of notes, especially after leaving that meeting yesterday. I was writing them all down frantically.
I'll just add in, I really do think if we can do some more with Palm Springs, because they've got such a high profile and we can tag on to their coattails in a way for our own press, that would be great. So Nancy, please keep us posted on anything official we can do with them.
Well, and also, Amanda, you know better than me, but it's like they get 200,000 people, right? A year? Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, you know, any chance or that we can to really make this impact the local businesses is something that I want us to keep top of mind as well.
Well, Laura Pla has already reached out. I gave her the contact for all the gallery owners, and we're talking about doing a stroll that Thursday night.
And she said everyone was in, Laura.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
sure to circle back. She was moving today, but she said everybody is on board. So
Yeah.
that Thursday night will be a gallery stroll in New Canaan. So that will be great.
Can you
Fantastic.
somehow combine that with some incentives with the restaurateurs? You go to the gallery and then,
Well,
I don't know.
that's the hope, but I think we could, possibly make a reservation somewhere, or I don't know, but, we will certainly talk to the restaurateurs to let them know that they're here. But they, the restaurants have been pretty full recently. So, but yeah, I can certainly talk to them, and I can coordinate with these guys, and maybe, we make a couple reservations places.
But I also think that, that Roger Sherman is the only hotel in town,
No.
and
Mhm.
they're not willing to do any kind of discounting for any of these events. And so everyone's staying in Norwalk.
Are they staying at that,
360 or whatever.
Ze-
Hotel Zero.
Zero.
They're not staying. The Palm Springs people didn't like Hotel Zero or 0 Degrees. They're
Yeah.
staying at the Renaissance.
Wow.
How about the place in Norwalk that has the weird name?
yeah, Lakota
Great.
Oaks?
Oh,
I gave them that. They didn't want that. I mean, Mark investigated all the stuff. They've ended up at the Renaissance. I have some people from Texas who are staying at Hotels 0 Degrees, and I have some people from Massachusetts staying there.
Hmm.
Hotel 0 Degrees was great. They will give people a serious discount, and but the Palm Springs people didn't want that.
So there's going to be a lot of residual press from this event. It's going to just keep going.
Dave, Nancy, where does David Peterson stand in opening up his gallery or his?
I don't know.
We need to touch base with David because I think he's done a lot of his work now.
Well, he's got a team in place, and I think that he's got a. I know his first exhibit will be spring of 2022. I asked him about October for Design, and he doesn't think his space is ready. So it might be something private. Maybe he'll have a party for himself or his invitees, but I don't think it's going to be anything public.
But if Kevin
Right.
were to contact him, I think, maybe
Well,
we could
gotta
push
just-
on him a bit.
We had just touch base. Maybe he could do a reception for the Palm Springs people.
How does the town, P&Z, town officials, how do they feel about a hotel, really encouraging the development of a hotel in town? How does that go over?
I had a meeting with, who's your board president, Laura?
Meredith.
Oh,
Fox.
Meredith.
Meredith. Meredith is very big on a hotel. Ridgefield's economic development people have been working on a hotel. Hotel is kind of a big order.
Yeah. But we
It
do.
is, but it's an essential part of being able to accommodate the kind of audience we want.
Right. Right.
But wasn't Nez on this board, on this group?
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened?
She just never came.
Busy.
No, she wasn't available to get to a lot of
Well,
meetings.
but
I
she's
think.
also only a dozen rooms or so, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a start, at least,
Right.
And the thing about the Roger Sherman is it's almost walking distance,
Yeah.
Right. And she had a lot of great programs when she initially came on this board. I mean, they had bikes out front that everybody, if you stayed there, you could ride into town. They would pick you up at the train if you didn't want to walk, if you had luggage or what have you, or concierge service. So we should probably reconnect with her. And I know
Greg,
she.
how would a hotel in town impact you?
Well, in the long run, it's essential for the overall design, but it's hard to say where we are right now after COVID. But pre-COVID, we were pretty much getting as many people as our permit allows us to do. So to really benefit from it, I would need more access to my site.
Hmm.
Are there any commercial buildings in town that could be converted to a hotel? I mean, how big a lift?
There
would
was
that
a
be?
rumor that the old Tolly space next to the People's Bank on Main Street,
Oh.
across from New Canaan Music, that someone was looking at that. But there's no parking there because that parking lot belongs to the buildings next door. So whether they did a valet,
That would be
and I-
again a boutique. I mean, that would be 7
Right.
rooms.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
What-
that's
what-
not
Yeah.
that's not out of the question yet.
What's happening with the
Melba
Outback?
Inn. Kevin, that's why Meredith was talking to you, because
Right.
her family grew up in the Melba Inn.
Exactly.
Right. The Outback is now rented, the top half of the Outback is rented to a dance studio, and the
Okay.
bottom half is now Health and Human Services, the town's Human Services. So
And wasn't Vine Cottage for sale at one point or being repurposed?
Yeah, Kevin, you want to address that?
Well, it's in the process of negotiation to try to have a developer redevelop it as residential property with the neighboring property. So,
Put a hotel on top of the parking structure that's got to be coming too.
Yeah.
what parking structure? Oh, the parking structure is coming.
Yeah.
Bottom line is we could spend this $6 million 100 times over, right? And
Right.
If we could make all
Does
our.
how many rooms does Gray Barnes have? Do we talk to them at all about partnering on anything?
But their rooms are like $500-600 a night.
Yeah.
And there's
the
only a few.
Lakota, the Lakota Oaks was really, Tucker and I went out there, we met with the people, she had dinner there, and then they have disappeared. I sent the Athletic Foundation, tried to get the Athletic Foundation people to hook up with them because, they're hosting all these tournaments. And, when we initially met with them, they want people on the weekends because during the week they were, this is all pre-COVID, using it as corporate training facilities and all that. And no one can get them to return a phone call. I mean, I emailed everyone out on their website. And I know people have been trying to get a hold of them and no one could do that.
Where is that?
It's off of, Marvin Ridge.
It's in West Norwalk. So if you were heading out Marvin Ridge, if you were going to cut through to Norwalk, and if you were heading toward Norwalk, it's on the left-hand side. It used to be owned by what, Prudential or some big life insurance company?
I think GE, but it was a monastery at one point. I mean, it looks like
Yeah.
a little bit like.
It's a huge campus. I mean, it's really cool.
Swimming pool and a ton of rooms. And they have an anchor tenant upstairs who does all of their remote training for their staff. People come in every week, but as Laura said, they really wanted to make something of their weekend business and they redid all of they have full banquet rooms. I think.
Yeah, they put a lot of money in there.
Reality is, I think the Route 7 Norwalk hotels sort of service our needs between the Hilton Garden Inn and the Marriott and the Zero Hotel Zero and the Even Hotel. There's kind of, it's hard, and those are, all do good businesses. So I think, and they're not that far away.
I know, but I do think there's something to be said for having a local hotel that then people would wander and shop and eat and, stuff that if you're in Norwalk, you're going to eat in someplace right there.
Right.
Well,
Yeah. All right, well, so just coming back to the recovery funds. So and I'll send this out to those that weren't able to join us tonight, but I would really love for everybody to be there. And then I think what I'd like to do is our next meeting isn't until, it's July 22nd, which, by the way, I'd like to go back in person. Everybody's starting to meet back in person at Town Hall. I think there'll always be a hybrid component for anybody that's traveling or can't be there or what have you. But I think our next meeting, I know our next meeting, I've already scheduled it. We'll be back in Town Hall. But in the meantime, we'll have this meeting on the 12th. And between now and then, if you have ideas, I will send you the press release tomorrow. But if you have ideas along the way that you think should be teed up or researched a bit more, send them to me and we can look at them that way as well.
You need to do the minutes.
I know I will before we finish.
All right.
I wanted to just let you know another thing that that we've accomplished this year, which is great, is the parking map. BJ's team helped us finally get a really user-friendly map on the website, on the town website, that shows you where 2-hour parking is, where boxcar parking is, and that kind of thing. We've got a couple little edits to make on it, but it's mobile friendly, it's user friendly. That's something that we had heard early on that we needed to do a better job of. So that's something that's there. Laura and I also did, Laura and I have been making the rounds. We did also meet after our last meeting. Laura spoke about the CT visit campaign and this cultural designation that Ridgefield had gotten. And so we went and met with the woman who basically quarterbacked the process through Ridgefield, and it's pretty labor intensive. Now, she was that kind of a gal. She loves to sit behind a computer and just do that kind of thing, and she got it done. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, because we certainly would be eligible and have the qualifications to meet the levels that you would need to get it. However, I'm not sure there's no grant money associated with it now or anything. It's just a nice designation, as I say, on the CT Visit website. I don't want us to lose sight of it. She gave us all the documents that she put together, which is a nice template that we could look at. And if we find at some point down the road that somebody wants to do that, there's certainly no harm in getting it done. But we didn't see a ton of advantages at this point in time of putting the effort in, because it seemed like it was a lot of work. Right, Laura?
Oh, I totally agree. This woman is very smart, very, has been deeply entrenched in Ridgefield. She's on their economic development committee. She's an ex-lawyer, And it took months, not, to put this thing together, and the state kept on changing their mind, what they wanted more site visit. It's something in the future, but, we were even mentioning it to the woman in Norwalk, and she said she's not gonna put the effort in until there's some state money attached to it. It's very cool, and we would certainly qualify, but unless we had someone who just said, I'm gonna take this on and I'm gonna pull all this information together,
So what I'm going to ask of all of you, and I will send this out to the whole group in an email tomorrow, is I'm going to identify, so as I say, the sort of the three main work streams that I think we need to be working on over the next few months. The market demand study, the relief funds, as well as any of the other, the broker follow-up and that kind of thing. And so I'd love everybody to serve on one of those subcommittees. Doesn't mean that we're going to have to be meeting necessarily, but it'll be some behind the scenes work getting done. The market demand study definitely needs a good read through. And I think if we had 2 or 3 people doing that and then coming together and just discussing what's relevant today and what we can take from that would be very helpful. Again, asking everybody to come on the 12th if you can. And as I say, the Board of Selectmen and all of the other town bodies are going to look to all of us for some of our recommendations. So I want to make sure we're well versed in that. I had New Canaan PR on the agenda, just that was a carryover from the last meeting. That really ties into everything we've been talking about. Again, when Laura and I met with this gal from Norwalk yesterday, it was really all about all the different aspects of PR that she was handling through the various different angles that she has. So that's something that we can discuss as we move further down the road on this.
EJ?
And I know that I had seen the Business Journal had featured a number of the towns right around us. So I will reach out to them and see if they'll do an interview of, our town. Very well done. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're doing so much more than these groups.
And Alan, I don't know if this would add any color to the LA story, to the movie story, but as you know, we have 2 movies being filmed in New Canaan right now. One is the Netflix that's being filmed on Sunday night. If you drive through town, you'll see Town Hall is going to be all decorated tomorrow with Christmas trees and all that kind of thing. And then they'll be filming Sunday night, overnight. And then we have another movie that's going to be filmed over at Waveney in July for 6 days at Waveney House. It's a Discovery Channel docuseries on the evolution of Wall Street. And they're using all of many of the rooms inside Waveney to show, Mr. Goldman and having breakfast and walking in the gardens and things like that. And then I got an inquiry today from the Disney Channel on something else. Having these movies in town is a lot of fun, but I literally spent my entire day answering questions for these guys today. Every second of the day, it was, where do I get this? And how do I do this? And that kind of thing. But it is fun and they're good movies and it does bring publicity. The one this weekend just finished up a week in Darien this past week, filming. Okay. And so they're moving from town to town.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more, especially about that Wall Street one. That could be fun to tease out, maybe to like CNBC or something. I'll also mention I'm reaching out to the Connecticut reporters from the New York Times about a storefront story about what we're doing with the
excellent.
and things, and also News 12. So just to try to get them down there. So stay tuned on that.
Okay. I want to also just highlight how during this past pandemic, our restaurants have just been great. And what you all did in expanding the sidewalks, the restaurateurs that we've spoken to are so appreciative. And so one, I'm wondering, I know the owners, managers of these restaurants are so busy, but I feel like we should have representation on TDAC by a restaurateur. So that's one thing. And while I think some of the restaurants are really thriving now, retail is still getting back on its feet. But I think that New Canaan is, as much as it's a cultural destination, it's a restaurant destination, right? And I think that marketing that aspect, and maybe there's a story about coming through the pandemic and the vitality that eating out, even during the pandemic, gave some vitality to the town. And it's now just even going further. So it seems like there's not only a story about this transition, but it's another avenue for marketing our town. I hate to leave retail behind, but I think that it's one of the real assets of New Canaan, a unique asset. People are coming from all over for our restaurants.
I think, and I need to look it up, but I think South End got a plug on
Yeah, they did.
one of the Hartford channels. I think the fact that he opened up a restaurant in the middle of it all. So I will find that link and send it to everybody. And
Laura,
that's his own PR team did that.
And I couldn't believe the other night, his new little restaurant, the back end,
Yep.
that it was like being in New York City in the West Village. I mean, it was packed with people. Hopefully, everyone's been vaccinated. But it was lively and crowded and a younger demographic. It was really exciting to see.
My
Yeah,
22-year-old's there right now.
There we go. I'd love to connect with Alan about the Fairfield Business Journal. That would be
Sure.
great.
I'd be happy to.
Happy to.
Laura and I met with one of the restaurant owners. Yeah, was that yesterday, Laura, day before? I'm not sure. And he reiterated what you said, Amanda. I mean, he said that we really made it more than just them surviving. I mean, they did thrive. And honestly, I don't know how many of you came down, but in the middle of February, people were sitting out at Elm and Soleil. I mean, they had all the heaters and they had that. And it was great. I mean, you were all bundled up, but they did it and it worked. And I'm so grateful to the restaurants for hanging in there with us.
Yeah.
It was a big effort, but it really made a big difference for the whole downtown. I know we always talk about, and when you go back to that market demand study, you will see there was a conversation, just gonna mute Alan. There was a discussion in there at one point about the balance of their recommendations on the balance of restaurants versus other businesses in a town. And while I agree that there is a balance, I think we're so much more of an experiential climate these days that people want to come for something like that. And then the rising tide will float all boats. I mean, that will spill over into our retail sector and our other businesses. So, all right. So just to wrap up, I'm going to send everything tomorrow. You all can tell me which subcommittees you want to work on. We'll get this going right away. We'll also have the hearing or the forum on the 12th. I'm going to follow up with Cole Acres again. We'll get David Peterson, find out what's going on with him. And if we do get a story going on any of the storefronts, we'll make sure that we give the credit to the artists for sure. In the meantime, back to the administrative part of this, I would love a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting on May 26th. Okay, Alan, and a second by Nancy. All good, everybody in favor? Aye, all right. And do take note that our next meeting will be, again, in person on the 22nd. We'll have a lot to go over. That will be an important meeting. We don't have a meeting scheduled in August, but I think with these ARPA funds, I think we're going to have to we'll probably have to add another meeting in there just to sift out some of the discussions.
Tucker, can I bring up one thing? I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the meeting. Maybe this came up. I got a survey today from somewhere on Facebook about the Boxcar thinking of doing a luxury bus. Is that anything you already discussed? If you did,
we didn't discuss it, but it is something we talked about. We did talk about the trains and the need to really get the express trains back in service for New Canaan. But yes, Kevin's been talking to Boxcar. There is a proposal there in other towns as well to provide a 75-minute New Canaan to down to Midtown, I guess, Manhattan, luxury bus, Wi-Fi, you know, seats, and I think it was $20 a trip, Kevin,
Tucker, all the way downtown, stopping in Midtown, going to Wall Street.
and $20 per.
$20 each way, yeah.
Right.
I actually talked to Joe, the CEO of Boxcar, this morning on the buses, and the idea that, you know, we have 4 express trains in the morning, 4 in the evening, and 5:30 historically is a Wall Street train. And the bus, so I encourage him to look at perhaps a 5:30 a.m. bus leaving New Canaan, going through Darien, going through Greenwich, and for Wall Streeters, and getting down there in about well, that could work. You know, probably doesn't work with all the traffic now when you get later in the morning. So
The problem that we're having is, you know, as I say, Metro North really wants to see the ridership
Yeah.
number increase before they'll start putting the trains back in service. But on the other hand, if we're providing all these alternatives, we might not see that. So, but I do think that 5:30 train, that could be an option for them.
Mhm. Okay, but that was
And
interesting.
what you did miss, Ellen, is we are going to be surveying the commuters again. We did survey them a while back, and we will be surveying them again in a couple of weeks, just asking, you know, what has changed, what they're commuting, maybe getting a little bit more into the detail in terms of, do they know what days of the week yet? You know, when we surveyed them before, they said they think they're going back 3 days a week, but now what are they learning? Because we are seeing a lot more people are going back into New York.
Yes, okay. Good.
So we'll get more information for our next meeting on that one as well. Anybody got anything else? No? All right, thank you. Motion to adjourn. Enjoy this beautiful night.
thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Hey, everyone.